Welcome to the Bible Forum. My name is Warren Sprouse. I'm here for you every Sunday night here on what we call the Bible Forum. It is a weekly program dedicated to keeping you informed on the events that are taking place in the world around you. The Bible Forum is a ministry of Alternatives, Biblical Counseling and Education Incorporated. It's a non-profit corporation, 501c3, which means your donations will assure the continuation of this ministry and are tax deductible. All you need to do is click the donate button on the website, thebibleforum.net. You can watch the Bible Forum live right there at that website in the screen that's provided. We're here every Sunday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. You can get involved in the chat room. You can sign up for a once weekly email. I'll lay out some of the things we're going to talk about this week. That's the only thing I do. Just write to us. Again, thebibleforum@gmail.com. This beginning of the program is usually dedicated to what I call short shots. Just little excerpts of things that are happening around the world. This week, the first one is entitled Oops. Apparently a ship carrying 16 climate change warriors looking to document purported ice melting conditions got trapped in ice last week in the Henlopen Strait, halfway between Norway and the North Pole. The ship is on an Arctic tour with a climate change documentary film team, along with some tourists, concerned with climate change and the melting Arctic ice. Captain Hansen, who for several decades has worked on various vessels in the Arctic, said, quote, "In the middle of July, we saw a few signs of thawing, and we assumed that spring had come. Of course, we had expected more melting. All 16 climate change warriors were evacuated by helicopter in what are called challenging conditions. All are safe." The author of the story noted, quote, "Something is very wrong with Arctic ice. Instead of melting as ordered by the UN/IPCC, it captured the ship with climate change warriors." This is the second time this year that unexpected thick ice has caused a problem for a vessel. Well, something is wrong, and it is wrong with something. It's just not the weather. We got a news flash from Great Britain this week. High school textbooks describing the male and female anatomy were tossed out, rewritten, or labeled offensive and outdated. Why? Because transgenderism is taking hold in these liberal enclaves. And Great Britain is a liberal enclave. It's an inescapable but almost universally ignored fact that in order for the ideology of gender fluidity to win the day, our previous understandings of the world are going to have to be trashed. School staff cannot simultaneously recognize biological realities while also allowing Joe to call himself Lucy and play on the girls' sports team, change in the girls' locker room, and use the girls' lavatory. In the transition, schools are grappling with how to deal with this strange new reality. And some have now decided to respond by banning certain distinctive differences in dress between girls and boys. From a publication called The Independent, I found an article that says at least 40 secondary schools in England have banned girls from wearing skirts. An analysis of uniform policies across the country brought that to their attention. Furthermore, schools are also considering the move to gender-neutral uniforms, which are more inclusive of transgender pupils. It's not just Great Britain, it's here, it's all over the world, not in Muslim countries. And it is the scourge of our generation. And more young people are getting caught up in this. Many are being damaged psychologically, some physically, because of what all of this means in terms of sexual relations and so forth. And it's not going to end, not until the Lord comes. Earlier this week, House Democrats here in the United States voted to block the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. This was a law designed to provide medical care for babies who happen to survive an abortion. The act, sponsored by Senator Ben Sasse, a Republican from Nebraska, would have also created penalties and jail time for healthcare practitioners who did not provide medical care after an attempted botched abortion. Mothers could also file lawsuits against healthcare practitioners who violated the act, according to a website called factcheck.org. The act was introduced to the Senate by Sasse earlier this year after Virginia Governor Ralph Northam claimed that infanticide still occurs when some abortion survivor babies are denied medical care after birth. That according to the National Review. But many Democrats voted against the act because similar protections are already in place. You see, here's the picture. A woman is admitted to a medical facility for an abortion. The baby is then removed from the mother and starts crying. The doctor then inserts a metal tube or something equally gruesome into the child's brain, and the baby is successfully aborted. This is what Democrats in Washington want to see continue. Why? Well, because women have rights. And until that baby is born and survives the birth, it doesn't. How about bringing these Democrats into the room to watch the procedure? The women especially. See what happens. We're hearing the word woke a lot in our culture these days. Are you woke? Well, we have something called woke capitalism. This from prophecynewswatch.com. It's basically patronizing only those companies and products produced by liberal companies which toe the party line on social issues. A case in point. You might be capable, you may be good at your job, and you should be if you're a Christian. But you might also face pressure to affirm and support your employer's political agenda. An agenda that may have little to do with the company's business model or strategic goals, but is considered politically, good for business. Many companies today face an incredible amount of pressure by outside advocacy groups, especially pro-LGBT organizations. The main strategy comes by weaponizing so-called hate group lists. One group, like ADF, are designated as hate groups by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Corporations are pressured to cut ties with any and all organizations that bear the scarlet H. H for hate. Case in point. Have you got a package from Amazon lately? Have you seen their gray trucks running up and down the streets in your neighborhood? They have a big gray truck with a darker gray swooping curve painted on it, which is the Amazon smile. Comes on the packages as well. When participants in the program make a purchase on Amazon, 0.5% of the price of their purchase can be designated as a donation to the charity of their choice. 0.5% might not sound like much, but as of last fall, Amazon had donated more than $100 million to eligible charities through the Smile program. Now, in response to outside pressure, Amazon is excluding any organization designated as a hate group. So ADF, the Family Research Council, and others are barred from Amazon's Smile. For example, companies that process credit card payments are pressured from doing business with anyone deemed a hate group, whether they are or they are not. If a ministry you love and support cannot find someone to process their credit card donations, that's a huge blow. There's also a new strategy to target donor-advised funds. These funds manage charitable donations on behalf of families, individuals, and organizations, and they carry along specific tax benefits. Most major wealth management organizations offer such benefits. Essentially, they allow a donation to be made now with the tax deduction, but distributed later according to the wishes of the donor. Now, what many people who use donor-advised funds fail to realize is that they actually surrender ownership of the assets they donate as soon as they do it, and essentially become advisors as to how the funds can or will be used. Add to this the pressure to appease Muslim groups, and you can see the combating cultures being established in America. You want to guess where that leads? Companies in the United States, and more specifically Silicon Valley, are building a social credit system. What happened here? They're building the social credit system for individuals, much like the social credit system Communist China uses to control its population. This authoritarian control is different in one way, however. It's being done by corporations as opposed to governments. Now, make no mistake, though the corporations building a social credit system in the United States are already another arm of the government. They're lobbying and using money made to get certain politicians elected. Now, this is the very definition of crony corporatism. And if anybody thinks we live in a democracy or a constitutional republic, they are either wholly uninformed, brainwashed, or willfully ignorant. Those days are gone. China's tyrannical social credit system is a technology-enabled, surveillance-based, nationwide program designed to nudge citizens toward better behavior, or what is government-approved behavior. The ultimate goal is to allow the trustworthy to roam everywhere under heaven while making it hard for the discredited to take a single step. And that's a quotation according to the Chinese government. According to Fast Company, China's social credit system has been characterized in one pithy tweet as authoritarianism gamified. But as you can see, it's already here in the United States in a little different way. While many Westerners are disturbed by what they read concerning China's social credit system, we really need to take a look at our own system and realize that we live under a similar situation. These systems are not unique to China. In fact, a parallel system is developing in the United States in part as a result of Silicon Valley and technology industry user policies, as well as by surveillance of social media activity by private companies. Big tech is helping advance totalitarian control over population by censoring information they deem goes against the government's agenda. For example, the New York State Department of Financial Services announced earlier this year that life insurance companies can base premiums on what they find in your social media posts. That Instagram picture showing you teasing a grizzly bear at Yellowstone with a martini in one hand and a bucket of cheese fries in the other, with a cigarette dangling from your mouth, could cost you. On the other hand, a Facebook post showing you doing yoga might actually save you money. Airbnb can disable your account for life for any reason it chooses, and it reserves the right not to tell you what that reason might be. The company's canned message includes the assertion, quote, "This decision is irreversible and will affect any duplicated or future accounts. Please understand that we are not obligated to provide an explanation for the action taken against your account." End of quote. The ban can be based on something the host privately tells Airbnb about something they believe you did while staying in their property. Airbnb's competitors have similar policies. It's also now easy to get banned by Uber. Whenever you get out of the car after an Uber ride, the app invites you to rate the driver. What many passengers don't know is that the driver also gets an invitation to rate you. Under a new policy announced just in May of this year, if your average rating is significantly below average, whatever that means, Uber will ban you from the service. You can also be banned on WhatsApp if too many other users block you. You can also get banned for sending spam, threatening messages, trying to hack or reverse engineer the WhatsApp app, or using the service with an unauthorized app. An increasing number of societal so-called privileges related to transportation, accommodations, communications, and the rates we pay for services like insurance are either controlled by technology companies or affected by how we use technology services, all while Silicon Valley's rules for being allowed to use their services are getting stricter. You thought it was a free society. We had a little issue this past week. A hurricane came rushing up the East Coast and raged over the Bahamas Islands. John Miller on Blaze TV said the left's latest meltdown was calling President Trump a bigot because he refused to accept Bahamians into the United States without proper documentation. You know, they're rushing off those islands. They're trying to get out, and some are coming here, and many want to. Well, the left freaked out because Trump was not willing to destroy our entire immigration system to accommodate random Bahamians affected by a hurricane. That, according to John Miller. Trump explains, saying that because large portions of the Bahamas were not hit by Hurricane Dorian, it made more sense to move Bahamians to those areas rather than shipping them all the way to the United States. He said we have to be very careful. Everybody needs proper documentation because the Bahamas have had severe problems with people going to the Bahamas who weren't supposed to be there. Well, a left-wing group called Common Dreams freaked out and declared that Trump was a racist for enforcing our laws. Now, according to the United Nations, the Bahamas have several gangs and listed something called the One Order Gang as the most organized. Other publications highlighted gang-related violence in the Bahamas. The U.S. and Canada issued warnings last year to tourists of the violence that was occurring in broad daylight. Miller said, quote, "Maybe that's why we should exercise caution when bringing them in. The Bahamas is part of the Commonwealth of Great Britain, so why not send them there? Why does the standard policy have to be that the United States must take on people fleeing from natural disasters?" Later, John highlighted a video that declared the word guys caused cognitive damage to women. Sorry. Here's something that happened in California. You be the judge. Was this a satanic attack, or is it something else? A California church was vandalized after its pastor and members publicly opposed the presentation of a drag queen story hour in a local public library. The pro-family group Mass Resistance documented the satanic messages painted on the walls of the church before Sunday services just last weekend. The messages include a star in a circle with the word Satan or Lucifer or King of Hell, and an obscene term I won't repeat. Last month, mass resistant activists in the San Diego suburb of Chula Vista began alerting the community about the drag queen story hour coming to their local library. Mass resistance recruited churches, including Pastor Amado Huizar of the South Bay Pentecostal Church in Chula Vista. But is this a satanic attack? Or is it simply a human attack by people who hate everything God stands for and seek to make it costly to just simply stand up? In the midst of all of this pastor tried to get into a library to see what was going on when these people dressed in drag were in there with these little preschoolers, and they wouldn't let him in. Wouldn't let him into the public library. If the tables were turned and there was a church service going on in there, and there were some people outside that were totally opposed to that, they'd be allowed in. You know they would. Here's an article from Miami I've entitled, "Can't Happen Here?" According to family members, husband and wife pastors in Cuba are serving prison sentences for declining to send their children to a government-run school where their daughter was bullied for being a Christian. Pastor Ramon Regal was sentenced to 2 years in prison in April for homeschooling his 2 children, as well as for leading an unregistered church. His wife is serving an 18-month sentence in a women's prison for refusing to educate their children in government-run schools, the only legal option in Cuba. Ruth Regal, 13-year-old daughter, states in a video produced by a Cuban audiovisual magazine called ADN, the Spanish acronym for DNA, and says that, quote, "It all started when I was in 4th grade. I suffered bullying at school because I was a Christian. I was kicked in the belly. So he," meaning her father, "decided to get me out of school. They began to chase us, to threaten us, saying that if we did not go to school, they would take us to the house of children without parental protection, and they were going to put my parents in jail," which they did. Another couple in their church has also been in prison for keeping their children out of the Cuban educational system, and 6 to 9 other Christian families have likely met the same fate, according to sources. Now the question becomes, with the biblical principle being, obey them that have the rule over you, Hebrews 13:17. What would you do in this situation? The verse is in context with the church, not the government. Although where the government does not regulate your spiritual commitments, we submit to its laws, being under subjection to the higher powers in our life. But when we end up with a state school system in America, oh, wait a minute, we already have one. We haven't had a public school for at least 3 decades. It's a state school. And the state decides that you can't have school anywhere but where we have it. You have to send your children here. You can't do this at home. What will you do? Obey them that have the rule over you? Or would you stand up and say, no, I won't put my children into this godless situation? There's facing that decision in Cuba and in many countries around the world, usually communist and also Muslim. But it is coming here. I don't expect to live long enough to see it, but my grandchildren will. What will you do? Have you heard about red flag laws? Do you know what they are? Do you know why we need them? Red flag laws are disguised efforts to undermine our fundamental rights as guaranteed by the Constitution. Why? Well, because we have destroyed the foundation of our society, the family, and we are reaping the result in an increasingly violent adolescent and young adult population, primarily among boys. There's a reason the first two amendments to our Constitution are the first two. The red flag laws, which already have been adopted in 17 states and the District of Columbia, allow police to seize guns from people who haven't been charged with a crime if they are deemed a danger to society. Fox News' Tucker Carlson asked, quote, "If government can simply take away your constitutional rights by deciding you are dangerous and not proving it, then how are they constitutional rights in the first place?" He noted the San Francisco Board of Supervisors recently passed a unanimous resolution, designated the NRA a domestic terror organization. An NRA spokeswoman, Dana Loesch, pointed out that some members of Congress, which is considering a federal red flag law, have referred to law-abiding gun owners as domestic terrorists. Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina has expressed his support for red flag laws. He's a Republican, says he's a Christian. And Representative Dan Crenshaw, a Republican from Texas, has said he is open to considering these laws. A Rasmussen poll found that 32% of likely Democrat voters favored declaring the NRA a terrorist organization. 14% of Republicans, 20% of voters not affiliated with either party agree. A total of 28% of Democrats say Americans should be prohibited by law from belonging to pro-gun rights organizations, like the NRA. A view which, by the way, is shared by 15% of Republicans and 10% of unaffiliates. Here's how it works. First, we destroy the nuclear family. Well, we've already done that. Secondly, we undermine the church, meaning the gospel. We've already done that. Thirdly, we change the definition of words. We've already done that. And lastly, we turn and attack the Constitution. And we're already doing that. And then what do you have? You have a secular, read pagan, society where each person is their own authority, and the government has the free rein to change the rules at will. Add to that a population watching one another for possible violations. Some are pointing to red flag rules that limit who can fly on airplanes. The reasons are many and varied, none that you, the consumer, see or can have changed for any reason. They simply are, and when they're applied, you can't fly. It would be simple to add other security limitations to a host of things. We already do it with gun purchases, passports, jobs. Why not social issues? The host of Democrat hopefuls running for party nomination for the office of president are spouting all sorts of liberal, socialist, and even communist ideas to the praise of a large percentage of Americans. Why not limit driver's licenses, attorneys' licenses, and a host of permits Americans must have for a wide variety of reasons? It's really very simple when you think about it. Have you thought about it?